But if I'm only for myself, what am I? A life organized around nothing but your own needs shrinks you no matter how well tended it is. I've counseled plenty of people whose social media feeds would have you thinking that they've got it all worked out. So why so many tears on my sofa? The best meal of your life doesn't feel as good the 10th time you chase it. Pleasure is real, but is it a life? Is it a good life? Find someone who needs you today, tomorrow, this week. Go be needed. That's the good life. It's not later, it starts now. The person doing the helping often benefits more than the person being helped. We know that from our experiences. That's the entire AA sponsorship model, given a clinical name many decades later. Welcome to The Meaning Mindset. I'm Rabbi Ron Li-Paz. This is episode 14 of season 3, and I'm grateful to Dr. Jack and Beth Lynn for their generous support of this season. My question to you is simple but complicated. What does it mean to live a good life? People have been asking that question as long as there have been people. Philosophers have filled careers and libraries on the basis, ultimately, of that question. Now, right now, it's one of the most searched and one of the most argued about questions on the internet, and so it should be. I think we should be having this conversation deeply, respectfully with one another. It's a topic we should be discussing everywhere, online, in person, sharing our insights and experiences. In fact, I want to invite you to share your thoughts on the good life in the comments section right here. I promise you that you'll be contributing to someone else's thoughts and perhaps their good life. I'll tell you something that might sound strange. The best school of life that I get to attend, and it really is a privilege, as odd as it sounds, is the House of Mourners and the funeral home. I know we don't like to even think of those places, let alone hear about them or speak of them, but consider this. The questions that come out of those places. What do the people who know us best say about the life we led? What can we, who are still listening right now, do to make large and small corrections so that our lives become a good life, so that what's said of us is he or she led a remarkable life? We can do that. I want to share some of what I've learned over 30 years of accompanying people through the highs and the lows of their lives, the rich and the poor, the well-known figures and completely private citizens. Has your notion of a good life or the good life changed from decade to decade? Is it still what it was when you were 20? Did something else earn the title when you turned 40 or 50 or 70? I don't know your age, of course. Another question to ponder, is the good life something that we actually attain, or is it more valuable as something that we pursue, something essentially unattainable? In our teens, we see everything as transitional. It's leading to something, to the better life, coming soon. And then adulthood, college, worthwhile job, success, good food, good music, a lot of fun. In my 20s, by those standards, I was living the good life in London. Hardly ever home. I remember food just rotting away in my refrigerator because I was out night and day. The accumulation of enjoyable moments. Nothing wrong with that, nothing wrong with any of that, but you already know that it has a ceiling. The best meal of your life doesn't feel as good the 10th time you chase it. Pleasure is real, but is it a life? Is it a good life? Most of us then move into the achievement phase of our lives. We gather promotions, titles, numbers in our bank account, the things around us. These days it all gets displayed like the old generation's piano top family photos. Look, world, we say. Look, my 5,000 online friends. This is the good life. Otherwise I wouldn't be posting it. Drink in one hand, someone else in the other, on a beach maybe that most people on the planet will never get to see. I've counseled plenty of people whose social media feeds would have you thinking that they've got it all worked out. So why so many tears on my sofa? Before I go on, personalize this. Ask yourself a question. Not when were you happiest, because happiness comes and goes and can be wiped out by a stubbed toe or a surprise credit card bill. Ask yourself, when were you most content? It's a quieter word. It's steadier. it might be the better clue leading to your own understanding of a good life, your good life. A lot of us think utter freedom is the good life, so we chase the unencumbered life, fewer obligations, more self-reliance. There's truth in that. Too much dependence on others can weigh us down. But a good life has a surprising facet to it: interdependence, deep, active relationships, reliability and reliance. The American notion of rugged individualism. In the old movies, the cowboy in the movie riding off into the sunset alone shouldn't be mistaken for something that it isn't. There's also a good life sold to us right now through wellness routines, through productivity systems, biohacking, personal branding. It looks disciplined, it looks serious, nothing like hedonism on the surface, but look closer. It's often just an industry convincing you that the good life is a more optimized version of you, achieved alone through better input, through better sleep, through better supplements, better coffee, better workouts, all fine things to want. None of them add up to a life that means something, because every one of them can be completely or completed without another human being ever entering the picture. Especially these days when your coach is online or even an AI companion. These personal improvement pursuits aren't bad. They're just incomplete. Each one is an ingredient mistaken for what I'd say is the whole recipe. And they all go flat for the same reason. They keep the camera pointed at you, at your pleasure, at your achievement. You can do everything right by those measures and still feel strangely alone in the middle of your beautiful life, because nothing in the recipe ever required another person to actually need you. So what's the missing ingredient? You can already see the direction I'm heading. Consider this: half of American adults, I know I'm speaking to people around the globe, but half of American adults now report feeling lonely on a regular basis. A few years ago, the U.S. Surgeon General called it a public health epidemic. I know the UK had the same. Chronic isolation carries a health risk on par with smoking, up to 15 cigarettes a day. I've said this before. It raises the risk of heart disease, stroke, early death. Now, that's not a soft concern. That's a crisis hiding behind a word that sounds almost cozy. I remember a tiny woman, I mean tiny, named Lillian, 4 feet tall, about a meter and a bit, on a box. We were laying her 107-year-old sister Anne to rest, and despite her grief, I saw in Lillian an irrepressible spark. When the moment was right, I asked her, "What's the answer?" And she knew the question without my having to ask it. Loudly, too loudly, she said, "We didn't drink, we didn't smoke, we didn't carouse. We ate our fruits and vegetables." And then she added, "But the key to a long life and a good life," she said, "always do for others." Here's what I've seen consistently across these decades of my work. The good life isn't a feeling you arrive at. It's something you build deliberately. And the single most reliable building material is service to others, to another person or a community. Let me be precise, because be generous can sound like a greeting card. I don't mean a vague spirit of niceness. I mean a specific, repeatable discovery. When a person's life feels aimless, anxious, or stuck, the most dependable thing that they can do, not the only thing, but the most dependable one, is to get into genuine service to someone else's need. Just think about that for a moment. I've watched this inside my own tradition, which has been prescribing exactly this more than anything else for 3,000 years, and I've watched an entirely different, entirely modern, entirely secular movement built by trial and error less than 100 years ago arrive at the same identical conclusion, completely independently. I'll come to that one in a moment. When two systems, though, that never spoke to each other keep landing on the same answer, that's not coincidence, that's data. That's an arrival at wisdom. One caveat first, and I'm not telling you that service is a cure for clinical depression or a replacement for therapy or medication when that's what you need. That would be irresponsible. What I'm telling you is that Short of that, separate from that, service is the most consistently effective thing I've ever seen across every kind of person in every stage of life. My own tradition doesn't ask you to feel a certain way first and then let the action follow later. It asks that you act, not because you feel like it, not because you even like the person or people you're helping. You act because it's the right and just thing to do. How you treat people is treated as inseparable for how you honor God. You can't fully live out faith without, or I should say through, belief and ritual alone, while neglecting your fellow human being. The system won't let you. There's a phrase for the larger project that all of this serves. It's called in Hebrew tikkun olam. I used it in another episode. It means repairing the world. The world, as it stands, is unfinished, and human beings were handed a share of the responsibility for finishing it. Not angels, not some future event that happens. You are the one that reframes the good life immediately, because you realize that it isn't a state that you achieve and then rest inside of. It's ongoing participation in something bigger than your own biography. One repair at a time, one person at a time. Take the word tzedakah, usually translated as charity. That's a bit of a mistranslation. It comes from the Hebrew word tzedek, which means justice, not generosity. Giving to someone in need isn't an optional kindness that you get credit for. It's closer to returning something that was already owed. You don't give because you're a good person doing someone a favor. You give because a just world requires it, and you happen to be the one standing there with the means to make it a little more just today. One of the great sages of my tradition, a great genius, Moses Maimonides, taught that the highest form of giving doesn't mean it's not the biggest check or the most public gesture. It's helping someone become self-sufficient, alone, a job, a partnership, whatever it takes, so they no longer need anyone's help at all. Notice what that tells you. The goal was never the warm feeling of the giver. It was always the dignity of the person on the other end. Service done right points away from yourself. And giving isn't only material. There's equally strong, I'd say in Judaism certainly, an equally strong current about showing up in person, about visiting the sick, welcoming a stranger, sitting with someone who just lost a parent or a spouse, the kid on the bench at school who's sitting alone. You can't outsource that to someone else or to a check. It insists that you show up. I've watched people who were genuinely lost, adrift, depressed, unsure why they were getting out of bed, find their way back, not through a breakthrough insight, but through sitting at someone else's bedside, or holding someone's hand, or driving a neighbor to the pharmacy every week for a year. Something in them reorganizes around being needed and of being of service. It happens too often to be coincidence. I think of one person in particular. I've changed details, but I've seen this many, many times, but this one comes to mind immediately. Successful career, family that looked good on paper, and a low hum of what's the point of any of this that never really fully went away. No matter what got checked off the list, nothing dramatic had gone wrong. That was almost the problem. No crisis to point to, just a quiet flatness under an apparently full life, profession, car, house, wife, kids. What changed things wasn't a new job, it wasn't a vacation, it was agreeing almost reluctantly to visit an elderly man who had no family nearby. One visit became a standing weekly commitment for a long time. And somewhere in the weeks that followed, without any grand realization, he told me by his own account that the flatness lifted, not because the visit solved that person's own life questions, because being seen and needed by somebody concretely on a schedule gave the week a shape that pleasure and achievement never had. Now here's the part that should get your attention, because it comes from a completely different world. In 1935, two men in Akron, Ohio, Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob Smith, founded AA, Alcoholics Anonymous. This wasn't ancient wisdom, though it was built on it. This was two alcoholics trying anything that might keep them sober, discovering something through pure trial and error. The 12 steps that they built have since helped millions of people, I know many of them, across 9 decades with every kind of addiction. Look at how the program ends. Step 12, having had a spiritual experience as the result of this course of action, we tried to carry this message to others. Not having recovered, go enjoy your life now. The final step of 12, the one that seals the previous 11, is turn around and help the next person still suffering. That's not a footnote in recovery culture. It's close to the whole engine of it. Ask anyone sober a long time what keeps them sober, and many of them will tell you, as they've told me, it's sponsoring someone else. It's sitting with a newcomer at 2 a.m. It's taking the panicked phone call. Picture that scene, someone with years of hard-won sobriety, woken at 2 a.m. by a person they barely know, but doing it anyway, because some part of them has learned in their bones that showing up for that stranger is what keeps their own footing solid as well. The program figured out empirically that a person's own recovery is safest when it's tied to someone else's. An ancient wisdom tradition, a modern secular movement built on trial and error. Neither one took from the other, though they learned from each other. Both concluded that stability for a human being runs through service to someone else, not around it. There's even a name for this in clinical literature. It's great. It's called the helper therapy principle. Think about that. The person doing the helping often benefits more than the person being helped. We know that from our experiences. That's the entire AA sponsorship model, given a clinical name many decades later. Now, I want to head off a misunderstanding, because I'm not telling you to erase yourself in service to others. That's not what any of this is asking for. In fact, that's damaging. Again, from my ancient tradition, the Rabbi Hillel, some 2,000 years ago, he gave us a line that might be the best answer I know, and it's built in 3 parts for exactly this reason. He said, if I'm not for myself, who will be for me? So first, you're required to tend to your own needs. Nobody else is necessarily coming to do that for you, consistently anyway. Secondly, but if I'm only for myself, what am I? A life organized around nothing but your own needs shrinks you, no matter how well tended it is. And that line, that ties it together, this one. Now listen, if not for myself, when? It's not that we're waiting for some future version of ourselves. The order matters. Self first, then others, then urgency. Nobody asks you to pour from an empty vessel. Take care of yourself, but don't stop there and don't wait, because if I'm only for myself is its own kind of poverty, no matter how comfortable it looks from the outside. And if you're listening to this in a season when you genuinely have nothing left to give, a real crisis, real depletion, just a difficult time, not just a hard day, then hear me clearly. This isn't a message for you to feel guilty about right now. If I'm not for myself, who will be for me comes first for a reason. Rest, get help, let others serve you for a while. That's not a failure. That's the same system working in the other direction. The message is for the more common condition most of us live in most of the time, not depleted, just adrift, comfortable enough, capable enough, and still asking what any of this is for. If that's you, don't wait until you feel ready. Go be needed and let the readiness follow. And this isn't just what I've seen from the pulpit. The research backs it up. People who volunteer or who perform consistent acts of kindness report being happier, less depressed, less lonely than those who don't. And the effect doesn't fade for many people. It deepens the longer they keep at it. The likely reason is something so human, so at our core. It's connection. Service pulls you out of this isolation that so often feeds despair in the first place, more reliably than almost anything you could do alone in your own head or online in your own head, which lines up exactly with what an ancient tradition figured out before there was a word for it, for depression, for what a room of recovering alcoholics figured out in the middle of the last century. Rumination is a trap you build for yourself in isolation. Service to another person is one of the few things strong enough to spring it, to release you, to free you toward the good life. So here's where this lands. Let me tell you what I actually tell people. I'm not a physician. I can't write a prescription for medication, and I wouldn't want that. I wouldn't want that authority if I had it. But I can prescribe something else. I can prescribe something that in the great majority of cases moves a person in the right direction. Service to others, generosity of spirit, prescribed for millennia, tested in every generation since, still highly effective. If you're at a loss right now for what to dream of, what to chase, what your purpose is supposed to be, well, first of all, look at some of my other episodes on this. Great guests talking about that. But here's what I'd ask you to do in the meantime, not instead of that, and not instead of deeper work. While you're doing it, serve another person today. That can mean a telephone call right now. Serve a community. Sit with someone who's sick. Show up for someone who's grieving, who's alone, who's struggling as you have struggled. Mentor someone younger who's lost. Volunteer for something that has nothing to do with your career or your image. Find one person or one place that needs you and give them your time. You will sleep better that night, not because you solved the whole future, not because you solved your whole problem, but because you proved to yourself in one concrete act that you already have something worth giving right now. You got out of your story into someone else's. That's incredible. It doesn't require a grand plan. It can be extremely small. As I said, it can be showing up at a hospital for the person nobody else remembered to visit that day or that week, or enough times. It can be the meal you bring to a family after a loss. It can be the hour or 10 minutes you give a struggling friend on the phone instead of the hour you spent scrolling or on the television. Mentoring a young person consistently, even when you don't feel like you have all the qualifications necessary. The volunteer shift you almost talk yourself out of. It doesn't have to be dramatic. It doesn't have to be in person, though in person is usually stronger medicine. Checking in on the neighbor who lives alone just because using a professional skill you have, accounting, writing, legal knowledge, isn't the same. Do this for free. Do it once. Do it for someone else who needs it. Being the person who organizes the meal train instead of waiting for someone else to do that, it doesn't require anything formal of us in terms of a title or education, just goodness and a commitment and a specific need and meeting it. None of this will show up on your resume. None of it is designed to be seen in that way. That, if anything else, is the whole point. The good life is built less out of the things people applaud you for and more out of the things you do when no one is watching or no one is counting. So what does it mean to live a good life? I don't think it means arriving anywhere. I don't think it's a feeling that shows up once you've achieved enough, acquired enough, or freed yourself from enough obligations. I think it means building day by day a life organized around other people's needs instead of just your own. Remember what Hillel said. And discovering almost as a side effect that this is also the most durable way to build your own stability, your own meaning, and your own inner peace. Go back to the three things we started with, these principles: pleasure and achievement and freedom. None of them disappear. You're still allowed to want a good meal, a great concert, a great accomplishment, a life with room to breathe, but none of that, none of them on their own was ever going to answer the question you actually came here with. Service is what turns those three good things from a private collection into an actual life, because it's the one ingredient that requires someone else to be standing there with you. An ancient tradition has been saying this for 3,000 years. A room full of recovering alcoholics figured this out over a century ago on their own. And think about the research that's telling us what we've realized, catching up with data. I'd rather that you and I don't wait for one more study to confirm it. Remember the order, because it's the whole thing. Be for yourself first. Take care of yourself. That part isn't optional, but don't stop there. Don't stay so entirely for yourself that you never find out what it feels like to be needed and seen by someone else. That's how you find out firsthand what you're actually made of. Find someone who needs you today, tomorrow, this week. Go be needed. That's the good life. It's not later, it starts now. This is the Meaning Mindset. This is episode 14 of the third season. Please hit follow. Please subscribe. Help us grow. Please share this with other people. And share your thoughts, your comments on what you've discovered about the good life, or even what your struggles might be. I promise you somebody else is sharing the same struggle. Thank you.
This season is produced and edited by Jonah Li-Paz. Content editing by Bronwyn Li-Paz. Digital marketing by Notebook Media. The Meaning Mindset is hosted by Rabbi Ron Li-Paz. Find us wherever you find your podcasts.